The lunch rush at Café Lumiere had finally ended, leaving Lily with a moment to catch her breath. She leaned against the back wall of the kitchen, massaging her feet through her worn black shoes. 6 hours down, 6 more to go. Double shifts were becoming her new normal. "Order up for table 12, the chef called out, sliding a plate of seared salmon across the counter. Lily straightened her back, tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and put on her practiced smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes but looked convincing enough for customers. She grabbed the plate and pushed through the swinging door into the dining room. Café Lumiere wasn't just any restaurant. With its crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and panoramic views of the city skyline, it catered to people who wouldn't blink at spending $300 on lunch. Lily had worked here for almost 3 years, ever since her life had taken an unexpected turn. As she approached table 12, she spotted Mr. Harlow seated alone, his attention fixed on his laptop. Richard Harlow was one of those customers the staff both dreaded and coveted. As the founder of a tech company worth billions, he tipped generously but expected nothing short of perfection. He had made 2 servers cry last month. "Your salmon, Mr. Harlow," Lily said, carefully placing the dish before him. He didn't look up. "The Brussels sprouts on the side, not touching the fish?" "Yes, sir. Just as you requested." He finally glanced at the plate, then gave a curt nod. In Richard Harlow's world, that was high praise. Lily turned to leave when the restaurant's sound system switched to a new song. The gentle opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the space. Her fingers twitched involuntarily at her side, muscle memory from another life responding to the familiar melody. 3 years since she'd touched a piano, and still her hands remembered. "Is there something else you need?" Harlow asked, noticing her lingering presence. Lily blinked, embarrassed to be caught daydreaming. "No, sir. Enjoy your meal." Back in the kitchen, her coworker Danny nudged her shoulder. "You got Harlow again?" "Poor thing. That man's a walking storm cloud," Lily shrugged. "He's not so bad once you learn his quirks. Besides, he always asks for my section." "That's because you're the only one who doesn't mess up his ridiculously specific orders," Danny said, loading her tray with drinks. "What does a person like that do with all that money anyway? Buy happiness? If only it were that simple," Lily thought. Money couldn't buy happiness, but it could pay for her sister's medical treatments. It could have kept her at music school instead of forcing her to drop out and pick up serving trays. The afternoon dragged on. Lily moved between tables, taking orders, delivering food, refilling water glasses. Her body worked on autopilot while her mind drifted. Tonight, after her shift, she would need to stop by the pharmacy to pick up Grace's medication. Then grocery shopping. They were almost out of everything. The hospital bill from last month was still unpaid. The thought made her stomach twist. At 5 o'clock, the dinner crowd began trickling in. Lily's feet ached, but she pushed the discomfort aside. The evening clientele tipped better than the lunch crowd. Richard Harlow remained at his table, now joined by 3 men in expensive suits. Their conversation drifted across the restaurant, something about investment opportunities and market projections. Lily approached to take their dinner orders. "The gentlemen will have menus," Harlow said before she could speak. "I'll have the usual." One of his companions, a gray-haired man with round glasses, looked up at Lily. "The usual? You come here often enough to have a usual?" Harlow didn't smile. "I practically live here. More reliable than my home kitchen, and Miss Chen here is the only server who gets my order right every time." Lily felt a flush of surprise that he knew her last name. She'd been wearing a name tag for 3 years, but most customers never bothered to read it, let alone remember it. "Very good. Mr. Harlow, I'll put that right in." As she walked away, the classical music changed again. This time Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the air. Lily paused mid-step, memories washing over her. She had played this piece for her final recital before everything fell apart. Her fingers moved subtly against her serving tray, playing invisible keys. From his table, Richard Harlow watched her, his sharp eyes catching the slight movement of her hands. Throughout dinner service, the restaurant grew busier. A famous food critic was seated in the corner. The owner made an appearance, making rounds and shaking hands. Through it all, Lily moved efficiently, balancing plates and smiling through her exhaustion. At 8:30, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her neighbor who was watching Grace. "Fever's up again. Gave her medicine. Doctor said call if it goes over 102. Lily closed her eyes briefly. She couldn't leave early, not again. Last time the manager had warned her that another early departure would cost her job. And without this job, without the health insurance it provided, everything all right? She jumped, nearly colliding with Richard Harlow, who had approached the service station where she stood. Yes, sir. I apologize. Can I get you something else? He studied her face for an uncomfortable moment. Another bottle of the Bordeaux for the table, right away. As she turned to retrieve the wine, the restaurant's grand piano caught her eye. It sat on a small platform near the windows, more decoration than instrument, occasionally played on weekend evenings by hired musicians. Tonight it stood silent, gleaming under the soft lights. Lily remembered when pianos meant something different to her. Before they became painful reminders of what she'd lost, they had been her greatest joy. From age 5, when her fingers could barely span an octave, she had shown unusual talent. By 12, she was performing in competitions. At 18, she had earned a full scholarship to one of the most prestigious music conservatories in the country. Then came her parents' car accident. Then her sister's diagnosis. Then the mounting bills and impossible choices. Music became a luxury she couldn't afford. As Lily delivered the wine to Harlow's table, she overheard him on the phone, his voice tight with frustration. What do you mean, canceled? The gala is in 2 weeks. He listened for a moment. No, that's unacceptable. I have 200 guests expecting a proper evening of entertainment. After pouring the wine, Lily discreetly stepped away, but not before hearing his final words. Find me another pianist by tomorrow, or don't bother coming to work on Monday. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of orders and bills. By the time the last customers left, it was nearly midnight. Lily's legs trembled with fatigue as she counted her tips. Good, but not great. Enough for this week's groceries, not enough for the overdue rent. As she collected final payments from the remaining tables, she noticed Richard Harlow still seated in the corner, now alone, staring at his phone with a scowl. Everyone else had left. Even the kitchen staff had cleaned up and departed. Only the manager remained, anxiously hovering near the bar, unwilling to ask their wealthiest regular customer to leave. Lily approached his table. We're closing soon, Mr. Harlow. Can I bring you anything else? He looked up, and for the first time she noticed how tired he looked beneath his commanding presence. No, just the check. As she processed his payment, his phone rang again. His expression darkened as he answered. Still nothing? The Henderson account depends on this gala being perfect. He glanced at the piano, then back at his empty wine glass. I don't care what it cost. Find me a pianist. Lily placed the receipt on the table and turned to leave. As she did, her hip bumped the edge of the table, sending the last of his water spilling directly onto his lap. She watched in horror as the liquid spread across his clearly expensive suit pants. I'm so sorry, she gasped, grabbing a napkin and offering it to him. His expression hardened as he stood, water dripping onto his Italian leather shoes. The manager rushed over, apologies tumbling from his lips. Richard Harlow raised his hand for silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, he looked directly at Lily and said, You've worked here for years, correct? She nodded, confused by the question. And I've noticed something about you. His eyes narrowed. Your hands. They move sometimes when the music plays, like you're playing along. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. She hadn't realized anyone had noticed. That piano, he said, pointing to the grand piano in the corner. It's just for show, or does it work? The manager jumped in. It's fully functional, Mr. Harlow. We have musicians on weekends. Richard Harlow's mouth curved into something between a smile and a challenge. Play something, he said to Lily. It wasn't a request. I can't, she stammered. You've ruined my evening and possibly my suit, he said, his voice quiet but firm. So humor me. Play something on that piano, or I'll have to speak to your manager about proper table service. The threat hung in the air. Lily looked at her manager, whose expression clearly communicated that keeping Richard Harlow happy was more important than her dignity. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she had touched a piano. 3 years of locking away that part of herself, of pretending she was just a waitress with no past worth mentioning. Her fingers trembled at the thought of breaking that silence. But she needed this job, needed it for grace. Slowly, she walked toward the piano, each step heavier than the last. She sat on the bench, the polished wood cool beneath her. The keys stared back at her, white and black, familiar and foreign all at once. Behind her, she felt Richard Harlow's eyes waiting. Lily stared at the piano keys, her heart hammering in her chest. The restaurant had fallen completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to watch the strange scene unfold. Their co-worker, still in her black and white uniform, perched nervously at the grand piano while Richard Harlow stood with arms crossed, waiting. The manager hovered nearby, his smile strained. "Mr. Harlow, perhaps this isn't—" "I'd like to hear her play." Richard cut him off, his voice leaving no room for debate. He turned to Lily. "Well?" Lily placed her trembling hands on the cool ivory keys. 3 years of dust seemed to settle between her fingers and the piano. What could she possibly play? Her repertoire had once been extensive, but now felt distant, like books read in childhood, remembered but hazy. She took a deep breath and began with the simplest piece she could recall, a Bach minuet she had learned as a child. Her fingers felt clumsy, striking wrong notes. She winced at each mistake. After a painful 30 seconds, she stopped, shame burning her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I haven't played in years." Richard's expression remained impassive. "Try again. Something you know well." The manager stepped forward. "Mr. Harlow, it's late and we really should be closing. I'll double my usual tip for the inconvenience," Richard replied, not taking his eyes off Lily. "Continue," he told her. Lily wanted to stand up, to tell this arrogant man that she wasn't a trained monkey performing for his amusement. But the thought of her sister at home, of the bills piling up on their kitchen table, kept her seated. She closed her eyes, trying to remember what piece had once felt most natural under her fingers. Debussy's Clair de Lune came to mind, the same piece that had been playing earlier when her hands had betrayed her. Moving in memory along with the music, her fingers found the opening notes hesitantly, like someone feeling their way through a dark room once familiar. The first few measures were shaky, uncertain, but then something shifted. Muscle memory began to awaken, her hands remembering what her mind had tried to forget. The music flowed more easily now, the gentle, rippling notes filling the empty restaurant. Lily kept her eyes closed, afraid to break the spell. She didn't play perfectly. There were missed notes, hesitations where her memory failed her, but the soul of the piece emerged nonetheless. When she finished, she opened her eyes to find the staff watching her with surprised expressions. The manager's mouth had fallen slightly open. Richard Harlow's face remained unreadable. "Another," he said simply. Something flickered inside Lily, a spark of the old fire that had once driven her to practice for hours, the determination that had won her competitions and scholarships. If he wanted a show, she would give him one. Her hands moved to the keys with new confidence. This time she chose Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor, a more challenging piece that had once been among her favorites. The melancholy opening notes seemed to speak directly to the hollow space in her chest where music used to live. As she played, her technical skills returned more fully, her fingers finding their old strength and precision. The piece built to its middle section, growing in intensity. Lily leaned into the music, no longer playing for Richard Harlow or her anxious manager or her watching co-workers. She played for herself, for the girl she had been before life forced her to set aside her dreams. Tears pricked at her eyes as her fingers danced across the keys. When was the last time she had allowed herself to feel this? The pure joy of creation, the release of emotion through music. For 3 years she had locked it all away, convinced that indulging even in memories would be too painful. As the piece returned to its gentle conclusion, Lily felt something break loose inside her, a dam holding back all she had suppressed. The final notes hung in the air, soft and lingering. The silence that followed felt sacred. No one moved. Lily remained at the piano, hands still on the keys, afraid to look up and break the spell. Finally, she heard Richard Harlow clear his throat. "Where did you study?" The question caught her off guard. She turned to face him, wiping quickly at her eyes. "Westridge Conservatory," she answered. "For 1.5 years." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Westridge doesn't accept mediocre talents." "I had a scholarship," she said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice despite herself. "Had?" Lily stood from the piano bench, suddenly uncomfortable with his questioning. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Harlow?" "We're closing and I have to get home." He studied her face. "You're taking care of someone." It wasn't a question. Lily stiffened. "My sister." Is she ill? I don't see how that's any of your business, Lily replied, her patience wearing thin. Who did this man think he was? To her surprise, Richard nodded. You're right. It's not. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Call this number tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp. Lily didn't take the card. Why would I do that? Because I'm hosting a charity gala in 2 weeks and my pianist just canceled. I pay well. The manager, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, suddenly appeared at Lily's side. Mr. Harlow, what a wonderful opportunity for Lily. She'll definitely call you tomorrow. He took the card from Richard's hand and pressed it into Lily's palm. Lily stared at the card, then back at Richard. I haven't performed in 3 years. I'm not a professional anymore. You weren't playing like an amateur just now, Richard said. He reached for his coat. 9 a.m. Don't be late. With that, he left a stack of bills on the table and walked out. The moment the door closed behind him, the staff erupted in excited chatter. Did that just happen? Danny squealed, rushing over to Lily. Richard Harlow wants to hire you? Do you know how rich he is? I know exactly how rich he is, Lily said, looking down at the business card. Simple white cardstock with just a name and phone number. He overtips on mediocre salmon 3 times a week. The manager clapped his hands together. This is wonderful, Lily. A connection like Richard Harlow could change everything for you. Lily slipped the card into her pocket. I haven't said I'll call, but you will, Danny insisted. You have to. Did you hear what he said about paying well? You need the money. That was true enough. But something about the way Richard had commanded her to play, had examined her like a curious specimen afterward, made her hesitate. She wasn't a charity case, and she certainly wasn't going to be bullied into performing just because a rich man snapped his fingers. After finishing her closing duties, Lily stepped out into the cool night air. The city hummed around her, never truly sleeping. She checked her phone. A text from her neighbor confirmed that Grace was sleeping peacefully now. Her fever reduced. On the bus ride home, Lily found herself touching the piano keys in her mind, running through the pieces she had played. Despite her initial resistance, the music had felt like coming home after a long absence. She had forgotten how it filled the empty spaces inside her. Her apartment building came into view, a shabby 5-story walk-up with flickering hallway lights and unreliable heating. Lily climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, wincing as her tired feet protested each step. She unlocked her door quietly and slipped inside. Their apartment was small. 1 bedroom they shared, a tiny kitchen and a living area barely big enough for a couch and coffee table. But it was clean, and the walls were covered with Grace's artwork and photos of happier times. Lily peeked into the bedroom. Grace was asleep, her breathing even, one arm thrown across a stuffed rabbit she'd had since childhood. At 16, her sister still looked young in sleep, the worry line smoothed from her forehead. Mrs. Patel, their neighbor, dozed in the chair beside the bed. The older woman had been a godsend, watching Grace when Lily worked late. Mrs. Patel, Lily whispered, gently touching the woman's shoulder. I'm home, Mrs. Patel startled awake. Oh, Lily, dear. Grace is better now. The medicine worked. Thank you for staying. I'll walk you back to your apartment. After settling Mrs. Patel back home with profuse thanks, Lily returned to find Grace awake and sitting up in bed. You're late, Grace said, her voice hoarse. Sorry, something happened at work. Lily sat on the edge of the bed and felt Grace's forehead, still warm but not burning hot like earlier. Did someone leave a huge tip? We could use a huge tip, Lily smiled. Not exactly. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. But at least it was a smaller truck than yesterday. Grace had developed her sense of humor as a defense mechanism against her illness, a rare autoimmune disorder that had appeared suddenly 3 years ago. Just months after their parents' death, Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out Richard Harlow's business card. A customer asked me to play the piano tonight. Grace's eyes widened. You played? Really played? Yes, and it felt good. Lily turned the card over in her hands. He wants me to perform at some fancy charity event. He says he'll pay well. Grace grabbed her hand. Lily, that's amazing. You have to do it. I don't know. He's not the nicest person. And I'm rusty. You should have heard all the mistakes I made. But you still played well enough that he wants to hire you. Grace pointed out. She looked around their small apartment. We need the money, Lily. The insurance only covers part of the treatments, and last month's hospital stay maxed out our credit cards. Lily knew her sister was right. Pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. I'll think about it. What's to think about? Call him, Lily sighed. Fine, I'll call. But only because you're bullying me into it, she added with a small smile. Grace grinned. Good, now tell me everything. Did you mess up? Did people clap? Was it like before? Go back to sleep. You need rest. I need details, Grace insisted. I've been stuck in this apartment for days. Give me something. Lily kicked off her shoes and stretched out beside her sister on the narrow bed. Well, I started with Bach and it was terrible. She recounted the evening's events, leaving out Richard Harlow's demanding attitude and focusing instead on how it felt to play again after so long. As she talked, she found herself growing animated, her hands moving in the air to demonstrate certain passages. Grace listened with shining eyes. See, you miss it. You've always missed it, Lily fell silent. It doesn't matter what I miss. What matters is taking care of you, paying the bills. I know you gave it up for me, Grace said quietly. After Mom and Dad died when I got sick, you gave up everything. Not everything, Lily said, squeezing her sister's hand. Not what matters most. As Grace drifted back to sleep, Lily sat in the darkened room staring at the business card. 9 a.m. Tomorrow might change everything, or it might be another dead end, another disappointment. Either way, she would face it as she had faced everything these past 3 years, one step at a time. She slipped the card under her pillow and closed her eyes, Debussy's gentle notes following her into sleep. Morning came too quickly. Lily had barely slept, her mind replaying the previous night's events on an endless loop. By the time her alarm rang at 7, she had already been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling. She checked on Grace, who was still sleeping peacefully, her fever gone. Lily left a note explaining she had an early meeting and would be back soon. After a quick shower, she stood before her closet, suddenly faced with a dilemma she hadn't considered. What does one wear to meet a millionaire about a piano performance? Her wardrobe offered limited options, mostly practical clothes for waitressing, a few casual outfits for days off. Nothing that screamed professional musician. She finally settled on her one decent pair of black pants and a blue blouse she'd bought for job interviews years ago. The address on Richard Harlow's card led her to a gleaming skyscraper downtown, the kind of building she passed every day but never entered. The security guard eyed her suspiciously as she approached the desk. I'm here to see Richard Harlow, she said, trying to sound like she belonged. Lily Chen. The guard checked his computer screen. ID, please. After verifying her identity, he directed her to the express elevator. 50th floor. His assistant will meet you. The elevator shot upward so quickly her ears popped. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area decorated in sleek grays and whites. A woman with a sharp bob haircut looked up from behind a modern glass desk. Ms. Chen, Mr. Harlow is expecting you. The assistant, her nameplate read Ms. Powell, led Lily through a series of hallways to a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard Harlow stood, gazing out at the view, his back to the door. He turned as they entered, looking exactly as he did at the restaurant, except now he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lily's yearly rent. 9 o'clock exactly, he said, glancing at his watch. I appreciate punctuality. Ms. Powell slipped out, closing the door behind her. Please sit. Richard gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. Would you like coffee? No, thank you, Lily said, perching on the edge of the seat. About last night? You play beautifully, he interrupted. Even after years without practice. That's rare. His direct compliment caught her off guard. Thank you. I assume you've come because you're interested in the gala performance. Lily took a deep breath. I'm here to learn more before making a decision. A hint of surprise crossed Richard's face. He was clearly a man accustomed to people jumping at his offers without question. Fair enough. He opened a folder on his desk. The Young Artist Foundation Gala is in 13 days. Black tie event. 400 guests, mostly business leaders and potential donors. I need a pianist for a 30-minute set during the cocktail hour and a 45-minute set during dinner. That's a lot of music to prepare in under 2 weeks, Lily said. Can you handle it? The question was a challenge, not a concern for her well-being. She lifted her chin slightly. What does the job pay? Richard named a figure that made Lily's eyes widen. It was more than she earned in 2 months at the restaurant. And I'll need time off from the restaurant to practice, she added, trying to hide her shock at the amount. I haven't played seriously in years. My fingers need to build strength and dexterity. Richard reached for his phone. Who's your manager? I'll call them. That's not necessary, Lily said quickly. I can handle my own schedule. He put down the phone. As you wish. There's a practice room 3 floors down you can use whenever you like. The building is open from 6 a.m. to midnight. I'll have Ms. Powell issue you a temporary access card. I have a sister who needs care, Lily said. I can't be away from home for long stretches. Something flickered across Richard's face, annoyance, understanding. It was gone too quickly to interpret. Bring her here if needed. There's a comfortable lounge near the practice room. Lily hadn't expected such easy accommodation. Why me? She asked suddenly. You could hire any professional pianist in the city with one phone call. Richard leaned back in his chair. Let's just say I recognize talent when I hear it, even when it's wearing a waitress uniform. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Especially then. Talent in unexpected places is always more interesting. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Do we have an agreement? Lily stood as well. Yes, I'll do it. Excellent. Ms. Powell will handle the paperwork and advance payment. I'd like to hear your proposed program by the end of the week. As Lily turned to leave, Richard added, One more thing, Ms. Chen. This isn't just a job. It's an audition. For what? We'll discuss that after the gala. With that cryptic statement, he returned his attention to his computer screen, dismissing her. Outside, Ms. Powell had contracts ready. As Lily signed, the assistant explained the building access, practice room procedures, and payment details. Within 20 minutes, Lily found herself back on the street, a check in her purse and a temporary ID card clipped to her blouse, wondering if she'd just made a brilliant move or a terrible mistake. Grace was awake when Lily returned home, eating cereal at their small kitchen table. Well? She demanded the moment Lily walked in. Did you call him? What did he say? Lily pulled the check from her purse and placed it on the table. Grace's spoon clattered against her bowl as she saw the amount. Are you serious? For one night of playing? For a lot of practice and one night of playing? Lily corrected her. I start today. This is amazing. Grace jumped up to hug her sister, then pulled back with a wince, her body still weak from her recent fever. Careful, Lily said, helping her back to her chair. The doctor said you need to take it easy this week. I'm fine. Tell me everything. Where are you going to practice? What will you play? Can I come watch? Lily explained about the practice room and Richard's offer to bring Grace along. But you're still recovering. I don't want you overdoing it. Please, Grace begged. I've been stuck in this apartment for weeks. I'm going crazy, and I want to see you play again. Really play, not just noodle around on Mrs. Patel's old keyboard. Lily couldn't resist her sister's pleading eyes. Fine, but you'll rest on the couch while I practice, and we're coming straight home if you get tired. 2 hours later, they entered the sleek office building. The practice room turned out to be a small recital space with perfect acoustics and a magnificent grand piano that made Lily's heart race just looking at it. True to Richard's word, there was a comfortable lounge area adjacent to the room where Grace could rest. This piano probably cost more than our entire building, Lily whispered, running her fingers lightly over the keys. Grace settled on a plush couch with her tablet and headphones. Stop stalling and play something. Lily sat at the bench, adjusted its height, and began with simple scales and arpeggios. Her fingers were stiff, protesting after years of carrying trays instead of dancing across keyboards. But as she warmed up, the old sensations returned, the connection between mind, heart, and fingertips that had once been as natural as breathing. After an hour of technical exercises, she moved on to pieces she was considering for the gala. Debussy's Clair de Lune was already coming back to her. She added Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece that had once been her signature performance. For something more upbeat, she tried Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, though she stumbled through the more difficult passages. Grace had removed her headphones to listen. That was always my favorite, she said when Lily paused. Remember how Dad used to ask you to play it every Sunday? The memory brought an unexpected lump to Lily's throat. He called it his church, she said softly. They shared a moment of silence for their father, who had driven Lily to endless piano lessons. who had sat in the front row of every recital with tears in his eyes. The practice room door opened, interrupting their thoughts. Richard Harlow stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space. "I thought I heard music," he said. "Don't stop on my account." Lily straightened her posture. "I didn't realize you'd be checking on me." "It's my building," he said simply. His gaze shifted to Grace. "And you must be the sister." Grace gave a small wave. "I'm Grace." Richard nodded in acknowledgement but didn't introduce himself, apparently assuming his identity was obvious. He walked to the piano and examined the sheet music Lily had spread across the rack. "Gershwin is ambitious," he commented. "The octave runs in the middle section require significant stamina." "I know," Lily said. "I'm working up to it." "You played it before?" "At Westridge?" "Yes, and before that?" "It was my audition piece." Richard nodded as if confirming something to himself. "Keep working. I'd like to hear your progress in a few days." He turned to leave, then paused. "There's a cafeteria on the second floor. Put any meals on my account while you're practicing here." After he left, Grace let out a breath. "So that's the famous Richard Harlow. He's intense." "That's one word for it," Lily agreed. "But he seems to really believe in your playing." Lily returned to the piano, flexing her sore fingers. "He's paying me to perform, Grace. It's a business transaction, not a vote of confidence." Over the next few days, a routine emerged. Lily worked morning shifts at the restaurant, then spent afternoons in the practice room. Grace came along when she felt strong enough, doing schoolwork in the lounge or just listening to Lily play. On days when Grace needed to rest at home, Mrs. Patel checked in on her. Lily's hands remembered more with each passing day. The pain in her fingers gradually transformed from sharp complaints to the familiar, almost pleasant ache of muscles rebuilding their strength. Technical passages that had seemed impossible at first began to flow more naturally. Music she had once known by heart returned in fragments that slowly knitted themselves back together. Richard appeared occasionally, listening for a few minutes before disappearing again with minimal comments. More precision in the left hand. The middle section drags. Better. His brief assessments frustrated and motivated Lily in equal measure. 1 week before the gala, Richard requested a full run-through of her program. Lily had settled on a mix of classical pieces and more, modern compositions that would appeal to a diverse audience. Debussy and Chopin alongside Gershwin and a few contemporary pieces. She played for nearly an hour while Richard sat, silently in the back row of the practice room. When she finished, her hands trembling slightly from exertion, he remained quiet for so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Finally, he stood. "You'll need a dress." Of all the responses she had anticipated, this wasn't one of them. "Excuse me?" "For the gala. Black tie means formal attire." Lily felt a flush of embarrassment. She hadn't even thought about what she would wear. "I'll figure something out. Ms. Powell will take you shopping tomorrow. The foundation will cover the expense." His tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "That's not necessary." "It is." He cut her off. "Your playing has improved remarkably in a week. Don't undermine your talent by looking unprepared." He headed for the door, then stopped. "One more thing. The final piece, the Gershwin. Play it again. This time don't think so much." "What do you mean?" "You're playing every note perfectly. But you're thinking about each one too hard. Let go. Remember why you loved this piece enough to make it your audition." With that surprising insight, he left, leaving Lily staring after him. How had he known exactly what was holding her back? She placed her hands on the keys again and closed her eyes. Instead of seeing the notes on the page, she pictured her father's face as he listened, the way he would tap his foot and nod along with the livelier sections. She thought of Grace as a little girl, dancing around their living room as Lily played. This time, when her fingers moved across the keys, the music soared. The shopping trip with Ms. Powell was unlike anything Lily had ever experienced. The assistant took her to a boutique so exclusive it didn't even have a sign outside, just a discreet number on a polished brass plate. Inside, clothes hung in sparse arrangements, each item given enough space to be admired individually. "Mr. Harlow called ahead," Ms. Powell explained as a sleek saleswoman approached. "They're expecting us." What followed was 2 hours of trying on dresses that cost more than Lily's yearly salary. Each time she emerged from the dressing room, Ms. Powell would assess her with a critical eye, occasionally snapping a photo on her phone to send to Richard for approval. Is this really necessary? Lily asked as she zipped up the fifth dress, a midnight blue gown with a subtle sparkle that caught the light when she moved. I'm just playing the piano, not walking a runway. Presentation matters, Miss Powell replied, not looking up from her phone. Mr. Harlow wants everything perfect. It feels strange, Lily admitted, smoothing the silky fabric. All this expense for one night. Ms. Powell finally looked up. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, revealing something gentler underneath. The people attending this gala won't just be listening to your music. They'll be seeing you as a complete package. The right dress isn't about vanity, it's about commanding respect. The midnight blue dress was ultimately chosen, along with simple silver heels and a small clutch. When Lily protested that she couldn't accept such expensive gifts, Ms. Powell cut her off. It's not a gift. It's a business expense. These people pay $5,000 per plate to attend. Everything must meet their expectations. As the gala approached, Lily's nerves grew increasingly frayed. She practiced obsessively, sometimes for 8 hours a day until her fingers cramped and Grace had to coax her to stop. The restaurant manager granted her a leave of absence after receiving a personal call from Richard Harlow, a fact that both relieved and unsettled her. The night before the gala, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat on the fire escape outside their apartment window, staring at the city lights and trying to calm her racing thoughts. Grace joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. You're going to be amazing tomorrow. Lily leaned against her sister. What if I freeze up? What if I forget everything? It's been so long since I performed for a real audience. Remember your first big recital? You were 10. You were so nervous you threw up backstage. Lily smiled despite herself. Dad cleaned me up and said it was just the music trying to find a different way out. And then you went out and played perfectly. Grace finished. You've got this, Lily. Music isn't something you do, it's who you are. Even when you stopped playing, it was still inside you waiting. The day of the gala dawned clear and crisp. A car arrived to pick up Lily at noon. For hair and makeup, the driver explained. She spent the afternoon being primped and polished by professionals who worked in efficient silence. By the time they finished, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant style, her makeup subtle but transformative. Back home, with just an hour before the car would return, she found Grace waiting with a small box. What's this? Lily asked. Open it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, their mother's favorite. One of the few pieces of jewelry they'd kept after selling most of their parents' possessions to cover medical bills. I can't take this, Lily protested. It's the only thing you have from Mom. I want you to wear it tonight, Grace insisted. She'd want you to have it for your first performance back. For luck. Tears threatened to ruin Lily's carefully applied makeup. She carefully clasped the bracelet around her wrist. Thank you. When she finally stepped into the blue gown, the transformation was complete. The waitress from Café Lumière had vanished, replaced by someone who looked like she belonged in the rarefied world of concert halls and charity galas. Grace stared at her. You look like you again, the you that you were always meant to be. The gala was held at the Grand Plaza Hotel, a historic landmark in the center of the city. As the car pulled up to the entrance, Lily's stomach tightened at the sight of photographers, red carpet, and elegantly dressed guests streaming inside. I'm supposed to go through there, she asked the driver. Service entrance is around back for performers, he replied, pulling away from the main entrance and circling to a quieter side of the building. A staff member led her through back hallways to a small room designated as the performers' waiting area. A magnificent grand piano had been positioned on a raised platform at the far end of the ballroom. Lily peeked through the door, watching as the room gradually filled with guests in tuxedos and glittering dresses. Nervous, she turned to find Richard Harlow standing behind her, impeccable in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. For once he wasn't looking at his phone or speaking to an assistant. His full attention was on her. Terrified, she admitted. Good, a little fear keeps you sharp. He glanced at his watch. 10 minutes until you start the cocktail set. Keep it light at first, then build the energy as more guests arrive. I remember the plan. He looked her up and down, taking in the dress, the hair, the transformation. You clean up well, Ms. Chen. Coming from anyone else, the comment might have been offensive. From him, it felt like high praise. So do you, Mr. Harlow. I almost didn't recognize you without salmon on your plate. A surprised smile briefly crossed his face. There she is. The waitress with the sharp tongue. Hold on to that spirit when you play. Before she could respond, he was gone, moving through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and greeting donors. 10 minutes later, a staff member gave her the signal. Lily walked to the piano, the spotlight finding her as she took her seat. The noise of the cocktail hour continued around her. These people weren't here to listen to a pianist, she reminded herself. She was background music, nothing more. She began with light classical pieces, simple enough to play while dealing with her nerves, complex enough to showcase her training. Most guests continued their conversations, occasionally glancing her way with mild interest. As the cocktail hour progressed, she moved into more distinctive pieces. Halfway through Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, she noticed conversations dying down, more people turning to watch. By the time she reached the powerful crescendo, the room had fallen almost completely silent. When she finished the piece, unexpected applause broke out across the ballroom. Lily felt her cheeks flush as she acknowledged the recognition with a small nod before continuing her set. During the break before dinner, Ms. Powell appeared with water and a light snack. "You've got them talking," she said. "Several guests have asked who you are. What did you tell them?" "That you're Mr. Harlow's latest discovery." The assistant's phone buzzed. "You're wanted at the head table for dinner." "I thought I was just playing, not dining," Lily said, confused. "Plans change. Follow me." Lily found herself seated at the most prominent table in the room, next to Richard and across from an older woman with striking silver hair and piercing blue eyes. "Lily Chen. This is Madeline Winters, director of the Young Artists Foundation," Richard introduced them as she took her seat. "Your playing is exquisite," Madeline said, studying Lily with interest. "Richard mentioned you studied at Westridge. Who was your teacher?" "Thomas Blackwood," Lily replied, surprised to be seated among such important guests rather than eating a quick meal in the back. Madeline's eyebrows rose. "Thomas doesn't take many students. He must have seen something special in you." Throughout dinner, Lily found herself drawn into conversations about music, education, and arts funding. These wealthy patrons spoke about millions of dollars as casually as she discussed bus fare. Yet when the topic turned to music, their passion seemed genuine. "Why did you leave Westridge?" Madeline asked during dessert. "Thomas spoke very highly of your potential." The question hit a sensitive spot. Lily glanced at Richard, who was watching her with unreadable eyes. "Family circumstances," she said simply. "My parents died and my sister needed me." Madeline nodded thoughtfully. "Life has a way of interrupting our plans. But talent like yours doesn't disappear. It waits." After dinner came the second performance. This time all eyes were on Lily as she returned to the piano. The polite interest of the cocktail hour had transformed into genuine anticipation. For this set, she had chosen more emotional pieces: Chopin's Ballade No. 1, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, pieces that required not just technical skill but deep feeling. As she played, she poured everything into the music: the grief of losing her parents, the weight of responsibility for Grace, the years of setting aside her own dreams, the joy of returning to the keyboard. She closed her eyes, forgetting the wealthy audience, the expensive dress, even Richard Harlow. There was only the music, speaking what words could not. When she played the final notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune, the silence that followed seemed to vibrate with emotion. Then came applause, not polite society applause, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. People rose to their feet, something rarely seen at such formal events. Lily stood, overwhelmed by the response. Across the room, she caught sight of a familiar face. Grace had somehow found her way into the ballroom and was clapping wildly, tears streaming down her face. As she made her way through the crowd afterward, people stopped her to offer compliments and ask questions about her background. Business cards were pressed into her hand. "Call me about playing at our event. We'd love to discuss representation. Have you considered recording?" Richard appeared at her elbow, smoothly extracting her from an enthusiastic group of donors. "You've made quite an impression," he said, guiding her toward a quieter corner. "I didn't expect this reaction," Lily admitted, still dazed by the response. "I did." He handed her a glass of champagne. "That's why I hired you. How did you know?" "That first night at the restaurant, I played terribly." "No, you played like someone who had forgotten themselves. But I saw who you could be again." He studied her over his glass. Now everyone else sees it too. Mr. Harlow, a staff member interrupted. The foundation director needs you for the donation announcement. Richard nodded. We'll continue this conversation later. Wait for me after the event concludes. As he walked away, Grace appeared, somehow having navigated the security to reach her sister. You were incredible, she exclaimed, hugging Lily tightly. Everyone was talking about you. I heard someone ask if you were a famous pianist from Europe. Lily laughed, the tension of the evening finally breaking. How did you even get in here? Ms. Powell snuck me in during your second set. Grace grinned. I think she's secretly a softie. For the rest of the evening, Lily floated through the gala in a haze of congratulations and conversations. It felt like a dream, one from which she was afraid to wake up. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, she found herself standing alone by the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys, committing the feeling to memory in case this was her one and only night in this world. It doesn't have to end here, Richard's voice came from behind her. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. This doesn't have to be just one night. Lily's mouth went dry. Westridge? I don't understand. I recognize talent when I hear it, Madeline said, her eyes kind but shrewd. And I remember every promising student who's passed through our doors. Your name came across my desk 3 years ago when you withdrew. Richard touched Lily's elbow lightly. Perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere quieter. They moved to a small sitting area away from the main ballroom. Grace somehow appeared at Lily's side, wide-eyed and silent in the presence of these important people. This is my sister, Grace, Lily said, drawing her closer. Madeline smiled warmly. The reason you left Westridge, I presume? Lily nodded. Our parents died. Grace needed care, and the medical bills. She trailed off, not wanting to detail their financial struggles in front of Richard. I understand, Madeline said. Life happens. But talent like yours doesn't come along every day. The conservatory has a special scholarship fund for exceptional cases. We'd like to offer you a position to complete your degree. Lily blinked, certain she had misheard. After 3 years. But I've been away from serious study for so long. Not as long as you think, Richard cut in. Based on what we heard tonight, you've maintained most of your technical skills. The rest will come back quickly. Grace squeezed Lily's hand so tightly it hurt. That's amazing, she whispered. It's not that simple, Lily said, looking at her sister. I have responsibilities. Madeline followed her gaze. Your sister's health? Lily nodded. Grace needs regular treatments. Insurance only covers part of it. That's why I work at the restaurant, for their health plan. The scholarship includes full health insurance that would cover dependents, Madeline said. And a living stipend. Lily felt lightheaded. Was this really happening? I would need to think about it. Talk it through with Grace. Of course, Madeline handed her a business card. Call me Monday. We can discuss details then. After Madeline left, Richard stayed, studying Lily with an expression she couldn't read. You planned this, she said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. The gala, Madeline being here. This wasn't just about finding a pianist for your event. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. I may have mentioned to Madeline that one of her former students would be performing. Why? Lily asked. Why go to all this trouble for someone who spilled water on your expensive suit? Richard was quiet for a moment. 20 years ago, I was a student at the Chicago Music Institute. Piano performance major. This revelation stunned Lily into silence. I was good. Not exceptional like you, but good enough. Then my father died suddenly, leaving the family business in disarray. I had to choose, music or responsibility. His gaze drifted to the piano across the room. I chose responsibility. Built the business into something my father never imagined. But not a day goes by that I don't wonder what might have been. So this was, what? Living through me? Lily asked, not unkindly. Call it making sure talent doesn't go to waste. He straightened his cuffs, his brief moment of vulnerability passing. The choice is yours, Ms. Chen. Unlike me, you now have options. With that, he returned to his hosting duties, leaving Lily and Grace alone. I can't believe this is happening, Grace whispered. Westridge. It's your dream. Was my dream, Lily corrected. Now my dream is making sure you're healthy and happy. But this solves everything. Their insurance would cover my treatments, you'd be back at school, We'll talk about it tomorrow, Lily interrupted gently. Tonight's been overwhelming enough. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More guests approached Lily with compliments and questions. Cards were pressed into her hand. An older gentleman who introduced himself as the head of a record label asked if she'd considered recording. A woman who ran a children's music foundation wanted to discuss a teaching position. By the time she and Grace arrived home in the car Richard had arranged, it was past midnight. They kicked off their shoes and collapsed onto their small sofa, both too wired to sleep. "So," Grace said, "are you going to call Madeline on Monday?" Lily sighed. "I don't know. Going back to school at my age, starting over. And what about you? Who would take care of you when I'm in classes or practicing?" "I'm 16, not 6, Grace reminded her. "And if this insurance is as good as they say, maybe I could finally get that treatment Dr. Wilson mentioned, the one that might put the disease in long-term remission." The possibility hung between them like a fragile bubble, too delicate to touch. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Lily cautioned. "We don't know the details yet. But you're considering it, right?" Grace pressed. "You're not just going to say no because you think you need to keep waiting tables for me?" Lily looked at her sister, really looked at her. Despite the chronic illness that had shadowed her teenage years, Grace's eyes were bright with hope. For 3 years, Lily had put her own dreams aside, convinced it was the only way to be there for Grace. What if there was another path? "I'll call on Monday," she promised. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Lily returned to the restaurant for her Saturday shift, feeling like she was moving underwater. Everything looked the same, the tables, the menus, the regular customers, but she had changed. Her manager approached as she tied on her apron. "So how was the fancy gala? Did you wow all those rich folks with your playing?" "It went well," Lily said, not ready to share the full story. "Thanks for giving me the time off." "Are you kidding? When Richard Harlow calls personally to request something, you don't say no. The man probably owns half the city." He patted her shoulder. "Glad you had your moment of glamour. Now table 12 needs their orders taken." As Lily moved through her familiar routine, taking orders, delivering food, refilling drinks, she felt oddly disconnected. For years this had been her life, her way of keeping afloat. Now suddenly there were possibilities she'd never dared consider. Sunday morning, she woke to find Grace already up, hunched over her laptop at their small kitchen table. "Look at this," Grace said excitedly, turning the screen toward Lily. "I found Westridge's website. They have an entire section on their scholarship programs. And look who's featured in their alumni spotlight." The page showed a photo of Richard Harlow at a grand piano, much younger but unmistakable, alongside an article about his donations to music education. "He wasn't just a student," Grace said. "He was a Westridge graduate who established their emergency scholarship fund 10 years ago. The same fund Madeline wants to use for you." Lily stared at the screen, pieces falling into place. "So that's the connection. He saw something of himself in me. Except you don't have to choose between music and responsibility," Grace said. "You can have both." Monday morning came with a sense of possibility that Lily hadn't felt in years. She called Madeline's office exactly at 9. "Ms. Winters is expecting your call," the receptionist said, transferring her immediately. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. The scholarship would cover full tuition, health insurance for both Lily and Grace as her dependent, and a modest living stipend. In return, Lily would need to maintain excellent academic standing and occasionally perform at conservatory events. "We would expect you to start next semester," Madeline explained. "That gives you 2 months to prepare. Your previous credits would transfer, of course." "This is incredibly generous," Lily said, still hardly believing it was real. "Talent deserves nurturing," Madeline replied. "And I should mention, this was not solely Richard's doing. After hearing you play, the board voted unanimously to offer you this opportunity." When Lily hung up, Grace was waiting expectantly. "Well?" "They want me back," Lily said, a smile spreading across her face. "They actually want me back." Grace threw her arms around her sister. "I knew it. I knew they would." That afternoon, Lily received a text from an unknown number. "My office, 3 p.m. if convenient." She arrived at Harlow Tower exactly on time, her heart pounding as the elevator carried her to the 50th floor. Ms. Powell showed her directly to Richard's office, where he stood gazing out at the city below. "You called Madeline," he said without turning around. "I did. And?" "I accepted the scholarship." Lily took a deep breath. "Thank you. Not just for the opportunity, but for making me play that night at the restaurant." Richard turned, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "Some talents are too precious to waste, Miss Chen. I simply opened a door. You walked through it. Why me, though? You must see dozens of people with potential every day. Not like you." He sat at his desk, gesturing for her to take a seat opposite. "Most people with real talent know it, nurture it. They don't hide it behind a serving tray, pretending to be something they're not." Lily bristled slightly. "I wasn't pretending. I was surviving." "Exactly. And now you can do more than survive. You can thrive." He pushed a folder across the desk. "One more thing. The Young Artists Foundation would like to offer your sister a position in their peer advocacy program. Part-time, flexible around her health needs and school schedule." Lily opened the folder to find details of a job that seemed tailor-made for Grace, working with other chronically ill teens, sharing her experiences helping them navigate the healthcare system. "She's 16, Lily said, though her heart leaped at the possibility. "Old enough to start finding her own path. With your support." Richard's phone buzzed. "I have another meeting. Ms. Powell will see you out." Lily stood to leave, then paused. "Will I see you?" "After I start at Westridge. I serve on the board," he said with the faintest hint of a smile. "And I never miss a student showcase." 6 months later, Lily sat on the stage of Westridge Conservatory's main recital hall, her fingers poised above the keys of their finest Steinway. The auditorium was filled with students, faculty, and donors for the spring showcase. In the front row sat Grace, healthier than she'd been in years. Thanks to a new treatment her improved insurance now covered. Beside her was Mrs. Patel, who still insisted on bringing them home-cooked meals despite their improved circumstances. And at the end of the row, almost hidden in shadow, was Richard Harlow, his expression expectant but no longer intimidating. Lily took a deep breath and began to play. Not Debussy or Chopin this time, but her own composition, a piece that spoke of loss and recovery, of dreams deferred and found again. As the music filled the hall, she reflected on the strange path that had led her here. One spilled glass of water, one moment of being forced to confront what she had buried, one person who saw beyond the uniform to the artist within. Sometimes, Lily thought as her fingers danced across the keys, the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful destinations.